On March 12, 1887, in the bustling streets of Atlanta, Georgia, Martha Carter lived a life of quiet servitude, her hands stitching not just fabric, but survival itself. Every thread she wove hid a secret, every seam a silent rebellion. What would you do if the very walls around you could become instruments of justice? March 12, 1887, Atlanta, Georgia. The sun pierces through the humid spring air, burning the red clay streets and glinting off the wrought iron balconies of the town's grandest homes. Merchants call their wares in uneven pitches, horse hooves clatter on cobblestones, and children chase each other through alleys, their laughter momentarily cutting the tension of a city built on hierarchy and control. In a modest clapboard house tucked between the shadows of sprawling mansions, Martha Carter moves silently through her narrow kitchen. The air is thick with the scent of simmering greens and burnt cornbread. The walls lined with jars of pickled vegetables, each one a small testament to labor and endurance. Her hands, calloused from years of washing, mending, and cooking, move with practiced precision, pressing seams, tucking stitches, whispering the rhythm of survival. Martha's life has always been measured by the whims of others. Her husband lost to a fever years ago, her children sent to distant relatives for their safety. She exists in the margins of wealth she will never touch. Her neighbors, free women of color, and the rare, sympathetic white mistress, offer fleeting comfort. But the reality is clear. Her world is the kitchen, the wash house, and the back stairs. While the Colonel's family lounges in silk and lace, sipping tea and ignoring the labor that sustains their comfort. Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore, a tall man with a sharp jaw and sharper temper, rules his household with the ease of someone accustomed to unquestioned obedience. His wife, pale and perfumed, flits through parlors as if the world itself bends to her caprice. And the overseer, a cruel man with eyes like cold iron, enforces every whim with a lash or a shout, leaving Martha to bear witness in silence. The contrast between Martha's reality and theirs is visceral. In the kitchen, the smoke from the hearth stings her eyes, sweat drips down her spine, and the coarse wood of the table presses against her palms. Outside, the Colonel's drawing room glows with polished floors, gleaming chandeliers, and the soft murmur of polite conversation. Every meal she prepares, every stitch she sews, every chore she completes is a reminder of the world she cannot touch, a world where injustice is gilded and obedience is law. Her senses, sharpened by necessity, catch every detail: the scent of lavender from the parlors, the faint metallic tang of the overseer's belt, the shiver in the air before a storm, the hush when the Colonel's voice cuts through the household like a whip. Yet in the shadows of this oppressive splendor, a quiet tension simmers. Martha has endured, yes, but her endurance is more than survival. It is awareness. She notices patterns, small cracks in the facade of power, the fleeting expressions of weakness behind confident eyes. She moves as if invisible, listening, learning, cataloging every slight, every injustice, every humiliation, and storing it in the secret recesses of her mind. The stage is set, the world established, the forces of wealth and cruelty lined against her. The day stretches long, oppressive, and Martha begins to imagine the impossible, a life where she no longer only endures, but acts, where her hands, once tools of submission, might become instruments of change. The turning moment comes quietly, almost imperceptibly. One humid afternoon, the Colonel's temper flares over a minor mishap: an uneven hem, a dropped tray, a spilled pot of stew, and the household witnesses a humiliation unlike any before. Martha, trembling yet resolute, feels a spark ignite within her, a mixture of fear, rage, and clarity. This is the line she can no longer cross with silent acquiescence. The betrayal, small in detail, but immense in consequence, fractures the invisible barrier between compliance and defiance. Her mind sharpens. She begins to map the household in her memory, the colonel's habits, the overseer's routines, the wife's blind indulgences. Every cruel word, every lash, every glance of superiority becomes a marker for what must be addressed, for the justice she intends to exact. Colonel Whitmore is meticulous in his tyranny, a man who finds subtle pleasure in humiliation, whose polished hands and calm voice belie the cruelty in his eyes. He insults servants publicly, punishes mistakes disproportionately, and delights in seeing dignity eroded. Overseer Jenkins, by contrast, is brute force made human, his belt a constant threat, his voice a hammer. He moves unpredictably, reveling in small acts of fear. The colonel's wife, though more restrained, embodies complicity. She flaunts her wealth, scorns Martha's humility, and turns a blind eye to every injustice. Her laughter, a constant reminder of the chasm between privilege and survival. Each antagonist is distinct, each cruelty cataloged and memorized, a psychological blueprint for retribution. Martha's transformation is gradual but inexorable. Where she once bent beneath oppression, she now steels herself, finding purpose in observation, strategy, and patience. The kitchen becomes a laboratory, the sewing room a command center. The smell of thread and oil, the rhythmic clatter of her sewing machine, the quiet creak of floorboards. These are no longer mere details of her existence. They are instruments of preparation. Nights stretch long with whispered plans and careful reconnaissance. Every casual conversation, every glance from the colonel, every routine he assumes is examined and stored for the day when endurance will no longer suffice. Atmosphere thickens with tension. The sun no longer warms, it illuminates. Shadows lengthen with foreboding. Martha feels the weight of history pressing against her shoulders, ancestors' voices urging vigilance, the hum of injustice vibrating through every room. She dreams of precision, of turning the tools of domesticity, needle, thread, fabric, into instruments of calculated justice. The household, once a realm of passive suffering, now thrums with the promise of change. Foreshadowing lingers in small details. A curtain slightly ajar, revealing the colonel's private ledger. A fleeting glance of the overseer inspecting tools. A loose board that might conceal secrets. Martha's resolve solidifies into calm determination. Her inner monologue is sharp and deliberate. Each action planned, each consequence considered. She does not rush. She waits. Observation becomes strategy. Patience becomes power. Every insult, every lash, every moment of subjugation strengthens the precision of her mind. The world outside continues unaware. Merchants hawking goods, children screaming in alleyways, birds wheeling through the warm afternoon sky. Yet within the house, tension coils like a snake ready to strike. The first thread of retribution has been spun. The plan takes shape in her mind, and the quiet, watchful housewife begins her transformation into an agent of justice. The moon hangs low over Atlanta, casting silver light through the thin curtains of the Carter household. Martha sits alone at her sewing table, the rhythmic hum of her machine filling the otherwise silent night. Her hands move with purpose, threading needles, folding cloth, and measuring lengths with meticulous care. Each motion is deliberate, precise, a mirror of the plan she has nurtured for months. Every detail has been accounted for. The colonel's predictable temper, the overseer's impatience, the wife's vanity. Martha thinks of each slight, each humiliation, and lets them shape her resolve. She works not in anger, but in calculation. Each stitch an act of justice, each cut of fabric a deliberate mark against the tyranny she has endured. The house is asleep, yet the air is thick with anticipation. A faint creak on the stairs, a distant bark, even the whisper of wind through the shutters. The world itself seems to hold its breath. Martha's mind races, rehearsing every step, visualizing every confrontation. The Colonel will wake in the morning to find the threads of his own cruelty stitched into the fabric he once demanded she perfect. The overseer, careless and overconfident, will stumble into the trap she has laid, guided by the patterns of his own arrogance. She pauses, feeling the weight of history pressing against her shoulders, the stories of ancestors who endured but never acted, and she imagines turning endurance into retribution. As dawn breaks, Martha moves with quiet precision. The kitchen smells of soot and morning bread, the air humid and heavy. She sets her plan into motion, every action measured, every step purposeful. She confronts each antagonist methodically, the Colonel first, a cold, steady gaze meeting his astonishment. The overseer next, caught in his own hubris. The Colonel's wife last, her vanity shattered by the revelation of her complicity. Each encounter is swift, deliberate, and calculated. Martha's calm contrasts sharply with the panic and disbelief of those who thought power belonged only to them. Violence exists only to serve justice, and every act is measured, symbolic, and inescapable. Threads of fabric become evidence, each stitch a ledger of wrongs tallied and repaid. The tension is almost unbearable, the air electric with suppressed outrage and careful execution. She moves silently, leaving traces of her precision, leaving no room for error. Every step resonates with psychological mastery, the weight of anticipation building with each measured action. There is no chaos, only the quiet certainty of inevitability. Martha's inner monologue is sharp, disciplined. Her patience, her observation, her endurance all converge into the moment she is prepared for. By midday, the house has changed. The air hums with the echoes of confrontation, the oppressors humbled by the cunning they could not foresee. Every movement Martha made was purposeful. Every choice, a calculated strike against injustice. The world outside continues its rhythms, oblivious to the quiet revolution that has taken place within the walls of the Carter household. For Martha, the culmination of months of preparation, observation, and quiet rage manifests in a singular, calm act of poetic justice. She sits once more at her sewing table, the hum of the machine returning to the silence of normality, her breathing steady, her eyes sharp. The reckoning is complete. The aftermath stretches like a slow, unyielding shadow. News of the Carter household spreads through Atlanta like a whisper at first, then as a story too vivid to ignore. The Colonel's once commanding presence is diminished, the overseer's cruelty exposed and humiliated, the wife's vanity shattered, and yet Martha moves quietly, observing the ripples of her actions. She is not yet celebrated, for history often waits before it renders judgment. But in the hearts of those who witness and survive oppression, she becomes a symbol. The air is thick with rumor and speculation, neighbors peering from windows, servants speaking in hushed tones, children absorbing the narrative of resistance and cleverness that now colors the streets. Authorities arrive eventually, drawn by the disruption, by the undeniable evidence of Martha's careful acts. There is inquiry, there are questions, there are consequences. But Martha's calm determination shields her. She speaks little, allowing the fabric of her actions to convey the truth more powerfully than any words. Trials may unfold, investigations may linger, but the story has already taken root in the collective memory. her methodical precision, her patient planning, and her unwavering focus transformed the narrative from one of simple survival to legend. Each account embellishes her courage, yet none can diminish the precision and purpose that defined her actions. The legacy of Martha Carter grows in whispers, in letters, in conversations long after her direct influence has ended. She becomes a cautionary tale for tyrants, a story of ingenuity for the oppressed, a symbol of how intellect and resolve can turn the tools of subjugation into instruments of justice. Children hear the story retold in kitchens and parlors, the younger generation absorbing a lesson in vigilance, in courage, in quiet resistance. The curtains she stitched with the Colonel's skin, grotesque yet symbolic, become a dark emblem of power turned on its head, and the image of a housewife who dared to act spreads through memory, oral history, and legend. Years later, the city itself shifts, and Martha's story is recounted with awe, fear, and respect. Historians, writers, and ordinary citizens preserve her tale, each retelling echoing the sense of precision, patience, and moral calculation that defined her. The narrative resonates across decades, inspiring others to recognize injustice, to endure, and to act when the moment demands it. The quiet, meticulous housewife becomes immortal not in wealth or comfort, but in the imprint of her courage and cunning. In the final stillness of her life, Martha sits at her table, threads and fabric around her, and the echoes of her rebellion linger in the air. The world she changed may have been small in scale, but immense in meaning. Each stitch, each carefully considered act, stands as a testament to the power of patience, intellect, and the refusal to remain passive under oppression. And as viewers, readers, or witnesses of her story, one question lingers at the edge of consciousness. What would you dare to create if injustice surrounded you? And what quiet rebellion might you leave stitched into the world?